of your APA manuscript. So if you go to the Written Assignments tab, you go to your content here on the left, you see Written Assignments. We're going to start with the results. So the results I've written for you, you do not need to write anything here. All you have to do is copy and paste it into your final paper. So click on Results, Social Connectedness, and we're going to go through the results here first. So the reason I wrote the results for you is because a lot of you don't know how to do statistics or haven't taken a formal statistics course, so it's just much easier. It'd be unfair to ask you to write a results section of a manuscript. So I wrote a basic results section testing the 5 hypotheses that we're testing, which are all correlations, and you should be able to understand the results of the correlations here. All you have to do for the final paper is copy and paste this into your document. It goes after the method section and before the discussion section. So let's go through the results. Hypothesis 1 was supported as a positive correlation was found between social connectedness and life satisfaction. Hypothesis 2 was also supported as there was a negative correlation between social connectedness and anxiety. And I have the actual statistics here to support this. There was a negative correlation between social connectedness and depression. That was also supported. Hypothesis 3 was supported as there was a negative correlation between social connectedness and somatization. So far, everything's been supported. First 3 hypotheses. Hypothesis 4 was not supported as there was not a positive correlation between social connectedness and GPA. The correlation was negative instead of the expected positive correlation. And finally, hypothesis 5 was supported as there was a negative correlation between social connectedness and stress. So 4 of the 5 hypotheses were supported. The only hypothesis that was not supported was hypothesis 4, which claimed that there would be a positive correlation between social connectedness and GPA. Instead, we found the opposite. We found a negative correlation between social connectedness and GPA. But 4 out of 5 is quite excellent in terms of supporting hypotheses. So you don't have to do anything here. This is just for the final paper. You copy and paste into your final paper after the method section, before the discussion section, and you're good. You don't have to change anything. You don't have to touch anything here. I just needed to go through the results before we talk about the discussion. So let's go to how to write the discussion. So I have a link up here, writing the discussion section. And that will be a PDF here, which I already have open. So for the discussion section, only 4 paragraphs. And make sure it's on the manuscript that we're writing based on the study that we're conducting in class. That study is the survey you did on social connectedness and its relationship to physical, mental health, and academic performance. For the method assignment, I saw a lot of papers on random topics, random articles that we're not doing, right? I mean, those articles already have a method section. Every part of the manuscript you're writing is based on the class study, which is the survey you did on on social connectedness and its relationship to physical health, mental health, and academic performance. That's the survey. That is the class study. Everything's on the class study. So, paragraph 1. I only want 4 paragraphs here. Not 10 paragraphs, not 12 paragraphs, not 6 paragraphs. Most of you have been okay following the directions. Some of you are writing whatever you want to write. So if you're writing whatever you want to write, you need to change that. You need to follow the directions. It's going to get you very far if you follow the directions. 4 solid paragraphs. Paragraph 1. Well, first off, discussion as the major header. So you're going to write the word discussion. You're going to center it at the top. Paragraph 1. Restate your hypotheses. State whether you support or fail to support your hypotheses. So we have 5 hypotheses. We're going to state each one and whether we supported it or didn't. So the first hypothesis is that it was hypothesized that there would be a positive correlation between life satisfaction and social connectedness. Hypothesis 1 was supported by the data. Then go into hypothesis 2, hypothesis 3, hypothesis 4, hypothesis 5. So you're going to state each of these 5 hypotheses and whether these hypotheses were supported or not. You don't need to tell me why they were supported or why they were not supported. You just have to tell me were they supported or not by the data in our current study, the class study. So very basic. Why do we do a paragraph like this in a discussion? Because some people have trouble in more complicated articles understanding the data, understanding the statistics. So if you have trouble understanding the statistics, you can go right to the discussion at the beginning and find out what happened in plain English. So you don't need to put any statistics here. No stats. Just tell me 5 hypotheses, which ones were supported, which ones were not supported. Very easy. In paragraph form, not a list. In a paragraph form. Paragraph 2. How do your findings relate to past research, especially the research discussed in the introduction? Was it similar or different than previous research? So each hypothesis that we're testing should have been talked about in the introduction. There should have been an article related to the topic of each hypothesis that was summarized in the introduction. If you don't have that, then you need to find that for paragraph 2. So, for example, hypothesis 1, positive correlation between life satisfaction and social connectedness. You should be citing an article that talks about this, previous research. And there's plenty of previous research that supports that hypothesis, that positive correlation between life satisfaction and social connectedness. You need to be citing, in this paragraph 2, you need to be citing 5 studies, 1 for each of the 5 hypotheses. Now, the only different one you may have is hypothesis 4, where you may have previous research that supported hypothesis 4, but in our study, we didn't support hypothesis 4, which is the positive correlation between academic performance and social connectedness. So why did hypothesis 4 not correspond to the previous research? You may talk about that here in paragraph 2. Maybe they did a study differently than we did our study. Maybe their measure of social connectedness was different. Maybe the sample was different. You should mention that. Hypothesis 4 was not supported. In previous research, it was supported. Other people did find a positive relationship between social connectedness and academics. Why do you think we didn't? There's no right or wrong answer. There are some things that, could have caused this. And you're gonna basically expand on this in paragraph 3. So when you fail to support your hypothesis, why? So why did we fail to support the one hypothesis? Well, it could be a small sample size. It could be a homogeneous sample. The sample was pretty much the same. It was all young New Yorkers predominantly, and predominantly female. Overwhelmingly female. Right? I mean, so maybe things are different if we look at males, or if we look at older people, or we look at people that don't live in New York City. Our sample was young, female, and living in New York City. That could be a limitation. I mean, the sample was small. That's a limitation. Ideally, we'd have a sample that was made up of people around the world, but those samples are very hard to get. Are there problems with internal or external validity? So you need to state what the internal validity and external validity are. Internal validity is the ability to draw cause and effect conclusions. That is very limited with a survey. since a survey is correlational. So with a survey, we cannot draw cause and effect conclusions. So I can't say that high social connectedness causes increased life satisfaction. I cannot say that. I can say it's related to, it's correlated with, but I can't say cause. So our study has low internal validity. You need an experiment to draw cause and effect conclusions, and we certainly don't have an experiment. How about external validity? External validity is the ability to generalize from the sample to the population. Can we generalize our results to the population at large? The answer is no. Why can't we do it? Because our sample is small, homogeneous, and primarily female and young. And that doesn't represent the entire population of even the US, let alone the world. So I can't just base on my study. I can't say, well, we know that in the world, high social connectedness leads to greater life satisfaction. I can't say that. Because that's the case in our sample, but our sample is very young, homogeneous, all female from New York, right? They're all the same. Predominantly all the same. I mean, we don't even have enough men in our sample to be comfortable drawing general conclusions. Maybe social connectedness is more important for women than for men. And we would never know that because we don't have enough men in our sample. Why do we not have enough men in our sample? Because undergraduate psych majors are overwhelmingly female. And it's been this way forever. There's a couple of reasons for that too. It's because there are many more women enrolled at colleges than men. That's one of the biggest reasons. Now, if I were to go outside the college environment and collect data, I would then balance out the sample better. But we didn't do that because that would be much harder to do. Right? And I'd probably have to pay people to do it. It'd cost a lot more. It'd be harder to set up. It's just much easier using the students at a college as your sample. And that's used everywhere. It's very hard to just go out in the public and gather data. If I send people anonymous surveys online in their email, are they going to answer them? Probably not. Unless I pay them. And even if I pay them, people don't do it. I mean, I've paid participants for research, and they still stop doing it, even if they're getting paid. So research is not that easy to do. And the sample is hard to fix. But we have to be realistic about the problem. So our study here, the class study, has problems with both internal validity, low internal validity, and low external validity. And you need to state that in your paragraph 3. And then paragraph 4, what are the real-world implications of the results? Well, there are some, although we have to be careful because of the limitations of the sample. We know that social connectedness improves people's physical and emotional health. It has a positive effect on people for the most part. I think there's other ways to measure social connectedness. We may need a variety of ways to measure social connectedness, especially given the negative correlation we found between social connectedness and academics or GPA. So what is that telling us? It could tell us that people think about social connectedness and they think about maybe social media use. And high amounts of social media use can lead to lower GPAs because students are spending too much time online and not enough time worried about academics. That's a real phenomenon. Some students are constantly checking social media, and they have to be checking social media every few minutes They have their phones on them like it's an appendage. You can't remove the phone from them. And it's a distraction. I mean, the phone's a distraction. It's nobody's fault. That's just technology. That's the age we live in. If you didn't have a smartphone, it wouldn't be a distraction. So I'm not blaming anybody for this. But it is part of life. It is a distraction for a lot of people. So there are several real-world implications. Another one is the pandemic. The pandemic really showed us the importance of social connectedness. You had students that weren't going to school. They were staying at home on Zoom. They weren't seeing their friends. They weren't making friends. They had no connection between their teachers, between the school they went to. These are aspects of social connectedness. And as a result, many students struggled during the pandemic. And they still struggle. They're catching up. They lost a couple of years of schooling, real schooling. So this study tells you that this is very important, especially socially. Some students may have trouble making friends because they weren't around other students during the pandemic when they were young and they were vulnerable. And this was the time for them to reach out and make friends. And they didn't because they were online. And as we know, online friendship is not the same as real friendship. Your online Facebook friends or Instagram friends are not necessarily real friends. Some of them may be, but they all aren't. A lot of these people are people you never met before. So real, genuine friendship, real connecting, in person, in real life, has benefits. It's very important. How would you address these limitations of the study? Well, the easiest is a bigger sample size, a more diverse sample. That would work great. Maybe different measures of social connectedness that can focus on various aspects of it. Like we're using one measure here. Maybe we need to use more than one measure. One measure might focus on online connectedness, and the other one might focus on in-person connectedness. There may be different ways to measure connectedness, social connectedness. Obviously, the sample's got to be changed. It's a small sample. It needs to be increased. It needs to change. It needs to be more diverse. Maybe there's something else you wanted to measure that you could measure in a future study that we didn't measure in this study that you think is important. So this is kind of up to you to come up with a creative answer in paragraph 4 of how to improve the study. So method at the top as the header, centered, and then 4 solid paragraphs here, and I gave you a lot of ideas. Save it as a PDF, upload it to Brightspace. And you upload it right here under written assignments. Right where it says assignment, you're going to upload it here. And you're done. So don't make it more difficult than it is. Don't give me more than 4 paragraphs. Give me 4 solid paragraphs, and I'll be very happy. And then I'll give you feedback, and you make the changes for the final paper. I know I had students asking me about multiple revisions. Unfortunately, I can't give multiple revisions on everything. Just because I'll run out of time. There's not enough time in the day to do multiple revisions for every student that I have. It's just impossible. That's why I'm making the videos. That's why I'm giving you instructions so that you can get it somewhat right when you submit your assignments. And then you will have a final paper revision where you can revise everything and submit the entire manuscript together. That's at the end of the semester. But take your time, watch these videos, ask questions. If you're not certain, ask me a question. If you need to schedule a Zoom, we can schedule a Zoom. Don't write in your assignment, I wasn't sure how to do this, so I'm submitting this anyway. Because that doesn't make any sense to me. If you don't know what you're doing, you need to ask. Right? I think it's pretty clear, but if you have questions, feel free to ask. I answer questions all the time. Don't just submit and say afterwards, oh, I didn't understand it. And the reason why a lot of people are doing this is they're not looking at the assignment until it's due. And I know it's the summer, and I know it's, we're all crunched for time here. But you got to look at it, watch the video, and then address it. So hopefully these videos are helping you. And for those that are still having questions, you can reach out to me, and I hope to answer or clarify things for you. So that's it for the discussion section. I'll see you next time for the title, abstract, and reference section. Have a good week.